Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. And I am say Al Bob, your griot, to tell you a story. And this channel is only for your entertainment. It's not, if you are an immature entity, you should get out of this channel. This is not for a childish mind of belief, right? This is someone who has the ability to be the decider, to understand, to it out, to define and delineate, to separate, and not be judgmental or, I don't believe in this. This is not my silo, so it's not on Fox. I can't, it's fake news. No, sorry. You have to be able to try and see how you fit in, and the world turns just like this. It just turns like this, and then there's a dimensional characteristic just like this, right? And you see the difference between photonic light and incandescent. Incandescent has shadows, right? See how there's a shadow here? Half of me is lit up, the other half is not. And that is the illumination of ego. Let's see, who's there? Eddie M. I'm trying, Bob. That a boy. Let's see. Where's my cup of coffee? So we're going to talk about the boys from Brazil. And now, who are they? The boys from Brazil are basically, Germany suffered the same kind of de-evolution it did after World War One, after World War Two. Germany bombed into the Stone Age. German people, MJ, good to see you, and the Nazis won the war. Nazis brought 70,000 Nazis into our government in the 40s through Operation Paperclip and through the Vatican rat line. And you can go to Dr. Joseph P. Farrell has many, many books about all of this, and he speaks of the entity of the dark sun. And that is, you have to understand good and evil within the construct of, cartoon reality is irrelevant, and what there is just like this, there is the photonic light, and then there's incandescent light of shadow. And it's up to you to be able to ferret this out, right? And yet there are folks who represent many, many, many mystery schools, and I've been part of many, many, many of them. But I've always been the guy who never wanted to, I want to know, but I don't want to, any club that wants me in it, I don't think I want to join, And so I'm appreciative of people who appreciate me, and I do my best to do my best work. And I'm here to serve love's co-creation, not any gob, any god, any of that. And Islam tried to ferret that out and said, they didn't want iconology. They thought Christianity was too much into that because the pagans were into that, and the Holy Roman Empire was basically a pagan business plan. And so you, the artist in the first person, has to go further than just what you were brought up under. You have to go deeper into what's inside of you, right? And you have to serve love, because anything that is not created with love is basically irrelevant, basically an ego trip, right? And that's what most of the mystery, the real deep mystery schools serve loves, right? Everything from Atlantis, south of Atlantis, is pretty much trying to look at what was left from the makers, right? And again, there's a hierarchy, right? A hegemony of this a spiritual ascension, right? And we are somewhere in the lower mid part of the totem pole, right? Now, the folks who are at the bottom, my teachers, Turtle and Ant, are, when people say, you're the lowest man in the totem pole. Well, that means you are the strongest, the smartest, the really dominant, not dominant, but you're there for the right reason, right? To serve, love's co-creation, not to serve your ego. People in the middle of the totem pole, oh, look at me, look at the wings I got. Oh, I'm so gold, I'm a light worker. Ooh, look at me, I'm glowing. Ooh, I'm a light worker. Ooh. Well, when you're a light worker, you're basically, who's the numero uno light worker? Lucifer, the morning star, and he was the illuminated one, right? What can I say? So I'm going to be talking about all my bumping into the night of finding these characters who try to constantly, get me into their club, right? And to be, just, a hitman for the corporate structure. And now I've been in the corporate. I've worked for the CFR, Council for Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission. You name the group. I've been, done studies for them. Right? They know who I am. They know for 30 years I was an itinerant scholar, but I never quite settled down. Right? And we all have our idiosyncratic things that keep us from maybe achieving maybe what we're supposed to achieve. And mine has been one of being a traveler, right? I always want to know, not just one thing, but pretty much every, I am here to serve love's co-creation. Whatever that is, I'm down with that, right? I'm there. And so I have been amongst some pretty interesting characters that most people would be, scare the crap out of them, but early on, my grandma showed me how to not be scared, and those guys appreciate my honesty, my sincerity, my integrity, and that I don't spill the beans. I'm talking stories now, and don't believe a word I say. And I've hit my griot period in life, and so I can tell stories, right? And they're just stories, and what the griot does is tell you a story about something, and that's why the chat is important, because ask me questions, I'll tell you a story that will illuminate your question, right? So let's see what you're saying hi, and yep. And Bob, oh no, I'm Bob. Eddie, again, trying is not good enough. All you have to do is your best. Just be your best. You don't have to be perfect. That's what gets people all their undies in a bunch about religion, is because they're supposed to be perfect and they can't, so then they have to go to confession and give the church money, right? No. Do your best. That's all you got to do. That's all Jesus asked. That's all Buddha asked. That's all Vishnu asked. That's all the burning bush asked, for us to do our best. So, I really appreciate this guy who has a YouTube channel, and it's called Dark Journalism, and here is him.
And we are live. This is Dark Journalist. It's great to have everyone here with us tonight. It's already a huge crowd. And tonight I'm joined by the lovely Olivia.
Hi, everybody.
It's great to see the original Batgirl.
It's good to be back. I've missed everybody terribly.
Well, Gotham City needs you. There's no question. Well, here we are on X100, everyone. And this is very interesting because it's also our 3-year anniversary. We didn't time it that way. It's just the magic combination of things. And the incredible election, which dragged out for X100. So we've been preparing this. X100 is a 3-part episode. So tonight's part 1, And what we're going to get into tonight, the title of it is Ghislaine in the Hot Zone. You might wonder, Ghislaine Maxwell in the hot zone? Well, we're going to show you how many of her activities and those of her famous paramour.
I knew you were going to use that word.
Jeffrey Epstein, have everything to do with the hot zone and the Atlantean technology and all the deep, strange geopolitics that go on there in the hot zone. And we're going to explain all of that to you here. Maybe a lot of the ex-people in the audience really understand this, but we're going to go really from the foundations of what that exactly means when we talk about the hot zone. Now, we also, the other piece of that is the Atlantean research. Why would they be down there? Why would they be doing this? What's the point? Why all the geopolitics? And as we've been trying to point out, going all the way back to Ernest Hemingway, and of course before that, there's been all these intrigues in the hot zone. That is an area between Cuba, the coast of Florida, Bimini, right there, Miami, the Yucatan Peninsula. That whole area stretching out has formed a geopolitical zone. It's formed an intense search for ancient ruins zone. And the third part, which is so crucial and needs to be understood, is land rising. We have to understand the concept of land rising and how when somebody thinks of that, they think, oh, that would seem far out. It would happen over hundreds of years. Well, according to the information that we have now supplied by the mystery schools, land is rising. And it's rising off the east coast of America. And this is going to become quite the sort of, if you thought the Wild West was wild, that land is going to rise in international waters, and everybody wants it before it gets there. And that's where we're seeing so much of this activity. Let us not forget also in the hot zone is AUTEC, which when we get into AUTEC, we're looking at underwater Area 51. So there's a large-scale UFO component to this. Earlier this week, I released an interview with Joan Zink, who is the widow of David Zink. And David Zink was one of my favorite Atlantis explorers, and he passed away about a decade ago, but he left behind incredible research around his efforts in the hot zone to really get into the Bimini Wall and the incredible things that he found, like pillars underwater that lit up the entire ocean floor, and things that were completely unexplained, including the magnetic anomaly that I refer to in the large picture as apothium, APOTHEUM. So we're going to get into that tonight. And one of the really incredible things that Joan had to say, and I highly recommend you watch that interview, is that the natives there and the people who are indigenous to Bimini, they understand the UFO thing very well. And when she was down there, they just call them fireflies. And they come out of the water, they put on a light show, they take off, they come back. And so it's like a regular occurrence for them. So what's that all about? We obviously have an underground UFO base there at Bimini as well. And then you also have AUTEC. So trying to weigh those things out and figure out what's going on. And then you find these characters, Fidel Castro, deep in the deep state soup, a target with the deep state at a time. And of course, you find all the incredible things that the CIA did from Central America and beyond. But if you go further back, you find people like Lindbergh, Charles Lindbergh, doing archaeology there. And I think one of the most explosive things that happened in this whole area are the readings that Edgar Casey gave about Atlantis rising and what that area was all about and why the strange magnetic anomalies, etc. So we're going to get into all that as we go. And in the second half of the show, we're going to be taking your questions. And I know people have been wanting.
So that is, you should go to that channel, Dark Journalism. That's his X series and the 100th show, right? And that was done back in March of 2021. So my stories is going to be very similar about that, but my experiences of it, right? So the first time I truly experienced the glowing of the Caribbean was when I was at a place called, it's a national park in the Keys below Miami, Bahia Honda, right? And I went there with my friend Gary, Gary Blue, who was trying to kill himself, and because he was a great artist and he came from the West, and he was, used to being with his horse and everything, but he was an amazing artist. Came to New York and hit it big, but he couldn't schmooze, couldn't talk, couldn't. And so he would drink too much and then say stuff he shouldn't, and piss off the people who were going to pay him a lot of money for his painting. So that was getting in the way. And then his girlfriend left him, and then he just started going down the drain. Plus, there was a group of my buddies, and we were like a crew. And I would get these gigs to build really fancy restaurants, interesting business offices, and really, really rich people's condos and lofts. And so we had and my buddy, the plumber, was the Albert Einstein of plumbing. I was the Albert Einstein of, electric, all things electric. Brazel was the mason. Willie was the carpenter and mudman and sheetrock boy, and Gary Blue was the painter. He was amazing spray painter and amazing painter. I mean, he could paint anything. So we had these great jobs, and we would we wouldn't have a contract. There'd be a contractor or an architect would get a hold of us. We would do the job, and they wouldn't have to worry about a thing. The contractor would take his little slice, but it would be, and we would run the job. He wouldn't have to run the job. He would just do the paperwork, and the architect would do the paperwork and do the design, and we would help, because two of those guys, all of us went to, except for Gary Blue, went to Cooper Union, and we all met there. And half of us I was in their new interesting department of alternative technologies. Two of the boys were architect students. One was a paint artist, and so anyway, we were the A team when it came to doing really exotic, amazing contracting stuff. Anyway, Fridays was an early day. We would call it at 3. We would have some Chinese food there, and beer and booze, and smoke a few slips, and then leave around 6 o'clock, right? And usually something of an extraordinary circumstance would occur. Like one time we were working on a building on Broadway, and it was a whole gigantic loft from Broadway to Mercer Street, or whatever, that street behind where NYU is. And we were turning it into a loft, 3 different lofts. And it was very strange, because there were windows on either end, but it was really long. So we wanted light. So we had a corridor of light that we were creating, so every room could have some sunlight, and we had mirrors and all kinds of things. Very magical, very Masonic, and the guy who was our client was Masonic architect, right? So it was one of those, and I got it through my connections with the Theosophical Society, right? So I had a lot of work like that. I, did some pretty interesting things for some pretty interesting people in New York. And so anyway, we're working on, we're demoing everything out first, and we're there. It's maybe the second week we've been working on this thing, and we're demoing things out and figuring out how we're going to do it, and getting materials, brought up to the job. And because it was such a big place, it was logistically better to gather the materials and have them there, so we wouldn't have to wait for stuff to come. So anyway, we're doing that, and it's Friday, so I think it's our second Friday, and we were, kicking back and eating Chinese food and drinking and smoking, and all of a sudden, a kind of deep, almost earthquake shaking of the whole building, and all the fire pipes, the sprinkler pipes, had about that much dust on them. And when, this shaking of the building happened, the dust, it was like snowing on the inside. And we were like pretty buzzed. So we were like but because the shaking didn't continue, it just boom, went on for about a minute or two and then stopped. And it ended with a big thud, right? Anyway, so we kept, kept doing it. And then we started hearing sirens, and we decided we might as well leave. And so we went down and we went out onto Broadway, and the Broadway Central Hotel had collapsed and slid into Broadway, right? And it was an SRO, so all the people who were in there were basically bums, single room occupancies, and whatchamacallit, there was I forget what the alley was, but there was this alley, and on the other side was Second Avenue, and a school bus had stopped, and just as we came out, and we saw like 40 priests and rabbis and other guys with collars coming there because there were a lot of dead people and they're doing the last rites. And running up Broadway were all these sub-bread hot dog guys coming up to, sell hot dogs to the crowd watching the mayhem, right? Because Broadway, that was it. It was, no cars were coming down Broadway until, whenever they cleared the Broadway Central out of Broadway. And it was like, all the way across into that alley and up about, two, and that's kind of what the World Trade Center should have looked like, but it didn't. World Trade Center went straight down into the hole, right? And that's why you should go read Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, right? So that, way better than the congressional hearings, the 9/11 hearings, which were a joke. So all that we're experiencing now is a culmination, starting back with the Civil War, Spanish-American War, First World War, Second World War, Korea, all of that has been basically a satanic ceremony of what this crew wants to have happen to the human race. So I'm going to go back and cook, but this was just a public service message that I'm going to, tell a longer story tonight between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. Get people to come. Tell people to come to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Alba, right? Tell them to watch the story, right? And I'll go deeper into everything. And go to Dark Journalism and, Grace's channel. What is it called? Let's see what it's called. Whoops. Let's see. Doctor, undecided. I'll try update. Well, Grace, I can't find her show. Anyway, so come back around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and get people to watch it. We have 450 subscribers. It'd be nice to get to 1,000, and it'd be nice if someone, anybody wants to talk to me privately, go to the dudeawake42@gmail. Anybody wants to put anything in my PayPal account, they're going to ask what, and that's, my email is dudeawake42@gmail. So that's the story. It's been 24 minutes. I'm going to sign off here and go back to cooking. Okay? So love you guys. See you later tonight. Do 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 do.